Hello, Tom again. In this video, what we're going to do is we're going to add an interface to our vehicle classes class library. So an interface is basically a standard by which we write certain classes. So for example, we're going to create an interface called IPassengerCarrier. With the uppercase I, that's kind of a naming convention that we use, although it's not technically required, but it easily identifies this as an interface. So what we're saying here is that any class that supports the IPassengerCarrier interface must have a passenger capacity, a passenger load property, as well as a move method. Okay. Basically what we're doing here is we're defining all of these things that we're defining are all things that have to be public in the class that supports it. So why would we do this? The main reason why you want to define an interface is for polymorphic reasons. So we want to create classes that we're able to, say, send to a method and do consistent things with, even if those classes are not necessarily related through inheritance. So in this particular case, I'm making the car support the passenger carrier interface. So I can send it to a function called, load random passengers or something along those lines. I might have another class called, well, we're going to create a class called passenger train, which has a different inheritance path. A passenger train and a car are not especially similar objects. So both of them could support this IPassengerCarrier interface. We can send both of those to a method that uses that type of interface, and everything works well. Um, Interfaces are related to abstract classes. They're kind of similar, but you can have two classes that are not even remotely related. So it could be not car and train, which would both be, related somehow to vehicle. You could have car and pack mule. Well, that would be more of a cargo thing. Maybe horse, which would be a passenger carrier as well. But a horse is not a vehicle, so there wouldn't be any direct relationship between the two. But if they both support the passenger carrier interface, we can do some common things together with them. So we're going to create this interface. We're going to make sure that car formally supports that interface, and then we're going to pop into the console application. We're going to test out some of these classes and interface stuff. All right, to add the interface itself, I'm going to right click on vehicle classes. I'm going to choose add, and you can't see this on the screen, but I'm going to choose component. So that brings up the add new item dialog box. Previously we had added classes this way. This time we're going to add an interface. I'm going to call my interface, instead of interface 1, which is a poor name, IPassengerCarrier.cs is fine. And I'm going to go ahead and add it. So that's created a new .cs file called IPassengerCarrier. We can see we've got all the various different usings. It's in the same namespace, and I've basically got a blank interface here. So I'm going to make it a public interface because I want to be able to access this from outside of the class. I'm going to start this off with some opening comments. So just the fact that I'm defining the interface in this file, you would be typing this in, so you should be putting your name there and of course today's date. I'm not going to be using all of these usings, so I'm going to get rid of all but the one that I need, which is system. And I will start off with a comment for the actual interface itself. So I'm going to use a documentation comment. There's my summary tag. I'll say a little bit about my interface. The IPassengerCarrier interface requires supporting classes to include passenger capacity and load properties. So that's my summary tag. I'm also going to put a reference tag in there as well. So C reference, and there's a handy link to MSDN that talks about interfaces and such. So in my actual interface, the only thing I'm able to specify are there's no sense in actually saying public because everything in an interface can only be public. There's no other options, but it's the features of the class that need to be included. So I want to say that anything that supports IPassengerCarrier, it needs to have a property called passenger capacity. That property needs to have both the set and the get implemented. So this is how I would define that. Int the name of the property, and the fact that I have both a set and a get. If I was only specifying in my interface that it needed to have a get, I would just simply leave the set out. Okay, so that's how you deal with a property. If it was a field, a public field that you had to have, then of course it would just be a semicolon at the end of passenger capacity. But it's not, it's a property. So I'll define the passenger load property the same way. There we go. So again, these two properties are not actually being implemented in the interface per se. Where they're implemented is in the class that actually supports it. This is just a guarantee that that particular class will have these properties so that you can write methods that use these properties for any class that supports it. Next, we'll do the method. So we said we were going to have a void method. It was a void method called move, and it had to have an integer parameter, and we're going to give the integer parameter a name. So now that we have our interface defined, let's go back to the car class, and we'll make sure that the car class actually supports IPassengerCarrier, and it's as simple as including it in a list. So after vehicle, just list IPassengerCarrier along with it. Okay, so what C# does is it makes sure that the class car inherits from vehicle and supports the IPassengerCarrier interface. In C# you can only have one parent class, unlike C++. I mentioned that before. But you can support as many interfaces as you like. Okay, so that allows the car to be not only the child of vehicle, but all kinds of other types of objects, which is helpful again for polymorphism purposes. So I've included it here, and of course I have to just make sure that I do have the two properties and the method all publicly that will allow me to actually support that. Okay, so we'll make that modification.